They want to rig these elections, and they want the power that gerrymandering provides. He's a failed president. Who else sends ICE?
Gavin Newsom's high-stakes gamble on gerrymandering is backfiring spectacularly. With lawsuits mounting, voters furious, and Republicans mobilizing, Newsom's plan to redraw California's congressional map could end up destroying his own political future. For years, California's redistricting process was held up as a model of fairness, run by an independent commission rather than partisan lawmakers. But as Republicans in Texas, backed by Donald Trump, redrew their district maps mid-decade to gain 5 new House seats, Gavin Newsom decided to fight fire with fire.
We have got to recognize the cards that have been dealt, and we have got to meet fire with fire.
His answer is Proposition 50, an unprecedented attempt to bypass California's independent commission and let the Democratic-controlled legislature take over redistricting. The move is not only controversial, but also risky. California's constitution requires voter approval for such a sweeping change, making the plan a public showdown rather than a quiet backroom deal. Supporters say it's necessary to counter Republican gerrymandering across the country. Critics call it a blatant power grab that undermines the very democratic values Newsom claims to defend. With lawsuits looming and national attention locked on California, Newsom has tied his reputation and perhaps his future ambitions to a gamble that could either cement Democratic power or leave him politically exposed. Proposition 50 was a full-on suspension of California's Independent Redistricting Commission until 2030. In its place, the Democratic-controlled legislature would draw the state's congressional lines, opening the door for aggressive gerrymandering aimed at flipping as many as 5 Republican-held seats.
It's not complicated. We're doing this in reaction to a president of the United States that called a sitting governor of the state of Texas and said, "Find me 5 seats." We're doing it in reaction.
Supporters argue it's the only way to counter Trump-backed redistricting efforts in other states. But the stakes are enormous. The measure would cost taxpayers an estimated $250 million for a special election, fueling anger over why such a costly power grab is even on the table. Critics warn it could unravel decades of progress in making California elections more transparent and fair. By handing redistricting power back to politicians, Newsom risks alienating independents and moderate Democrats who have long supported the commission's neutrality. The proposal has transformed what could have been a quiet political maneuver into a high-profile battle over democracy itself. If Proposition 50 succeeds, it could tilt California's political map for the next decade. But if it fails, Newsom may not just lose the fight, he could lose the credibility he's built as a national Democratic figure. The backlash to Proposition 50 has been swift and brutal. Republicans have framed it as a last-ditch fight to save California's democracy, filing lawsuits to block the measure before it ever reaches voters. But it's not just the GOP pushing back. Some Democrats, independents, and good government groups are lining up against Newsom's plan, warning that dismantling the independent commission would betray the very principles California once championed. Even former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who helped establish the commission, has come out swinging, calling the proposal a blatant power grab.
If you know what I mean.
Former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger is urging Californians to rebuke Governor Gavin Newsom's November redistricting ballot measure.
Polling suggests most voters still trust the independent process over partisan map drawing, a trend that could doom Proposition 50 at the ballot box. This is no longer just a policy dispute. It's an all-out political war with Newsom at the center. Each public statement, lawsuit, and poll release adds pressure to a governor already accused of overreaching. Instead of rallying his base, Newsom's move may be creating a rare bipartisan coalition against him. A coalition powerful enough to derail not just Proposition 50, but also his carefully crafted image as the Democrats' national power broker. Inside Newsom's own party, cracks are beginning to show. What was supposed to be a rallying cry against Republican gerrymandering is now splitting Democrats between those who see Proposition 50 as a bold counterattack and those who view it as a dangerous betrayal of California's reform legacy. Moderate lawmakers and longtime reform advocates warn that dismantling the independent commission will alienate independents and undermine the credibility Democrats have built on voting rights. Progressive activists, meanwhile, fear the backlash could energize Republicans and depress turnout among disillusioned Democratic voters. Even national party figures are keeping their distance, wary of being tied to a fight that's looking more like a liability than a triumph. Instead of unifying his base, Newsom may be exposing fault lines that weaken both his leadership and his party's ability to project a consistent message on democracy and fair representation. The uproar over Proposition 50 has ignited a radical new idea among California Republicans, splitting the state in two. Their proposal draws a hard line between the liberal urban coast and the conservative rural interior, creating two separate states with vastly different political identities. Supporters call it a two-state solution to what they see as one-party dominance and gerrymandering run amok. While the plan faces enormous legal and logistical hurdles, it has already become a potent symbol of the backlash to Newsom's maneuver,
putting Proposition 50 on the statewide ballot.
We can't just think differently, we have to act differently. We're putting a stake in the ground, and we're asking the people of the state of California to support Proposition 50.
The fact it's being seriously discussed shows just how deep California's political divide has grown. For Newsom, it's a nightmare scenario. His attempts to secure more Democratic power may have instead fueled the biggest secessionist movement the state has seen in decades, exposing his political isolation at the very moment he's trying to project strength. Gavin Newsom's gamble on Proposition 50 isn't just about congressional maps, but about his own future. Widely seen as a rising Democratic star with presidential ambitions, Newsom has staked his reputation on proving he can outmaneuver Trump and the GOP. But instead of looking like a bold strategist, he now risks appearing desperate and overreaching.
Donald Trump cannot win by playing by the rules. He has to completely throw out the rule book. He has to rig the election.
Every setback, from lawsuits to plunging poll numbers, chips away at the image he's spent years crafting. Allies whisper that his aggressive push could alienate moderates he'll need for a national campaign, while critics frame him as the face of hypocrisy, preaching democracy while undermining it at home. With his social media defenses growing more frantic and public frustration mounting, Newsom faces a defining moment. If this plan collapses, it won't just cost him seats in Congress. It could cost him the political credibility he needs to compete on the national stage. While Newsom scrambles to salvage his plan, Republicans across the country are quietly locking in their own power. States like Texas, Iowa, Ohio, Utah, and Indiana have already pushed through aggressive redistricting without needing voter approval, cementing GOP advantages for years to come. Trump and his allies see California's chaos as proof that Democrats can't execute their own strategy, and they're using it to rally their base ahead of 2026. As Newsom's gambit falters, Republican-controlled states are not only solidifying their hold on Congress, but also shaping the national narrative. The contrast is stark. While Democrats fight among themselves in California, the GOP is steadily building momentum nationwide. Newsom's gamble now feeds into a much larger crisis for Democrats nationwide. What began as a calculated strike against Republican gerrymandering has turned into a case study in political overreach. By trying to rewrite California's rules, Newsom has handed his opponents a powerful narrative about hypocrisy and desperation. Democrats who once applauded his aggressive tactics are now questioning whether the party has lost its moral high ground on voting rights and fair representation. If Proposition 50 fails, it will wound Newsom personally, but more importantly, it could undercut the entire Democratic argument that they're the defenders of democracy. Worse, it might embolden Republicans to double down on their own redistricting efforts in other states. Instead of containing GOP power, Newsom's plan could accelerate it, turning California from a Democratic stronghold into a cautionary tale of how not to fight a national political war.